Greetings from Boston, man. Welcome to Tennis Talk Daily, man. Where we do the Dustin Brown tennis talk, man. How do you like this tennis talk, huh? That's cool tennis talk, man. Well, Bob Marley, he does know how to do some tennis talk. I think he was a tennis player, right? Well, Dustin Brown is carrying on the legacy of Bob Marley in professional tennis. Welcome to Tennis Talk Daily. My name is Aaron Knapp. You guys thought I was joking around about this wig. You said, oh, that's just going to be one day. No, I'm serious. This is going to be how we do tennis talk. It's going to be Rastafarian tennis talk, man. With Dustin Brown, man. That's my terrible Rastafarian accent. But no, a couple of viewers did notice that I didn't mention Dustin Brown, and that was probably the most obvious person to mention. I think that probably makes sense. But the great thing about this wig is that there's just an infinite variety of people that you can be with this wig. People mentioned Boy George. People mentioned, well, of course, Bob Marley, Dustin Brown. There was a whole number of others. And if I put this jacket on, which is kind of a professorial jacket, right? And I actually am a professor, but I can be Professor Longhair, who is a blues singer, an American blues singer. But yeah, there's an infinite variety of people I can be with this wig. But in any case, we're going to do Rastafarian tennis talk, man. Subscribe to the channel to get Rasta talk, the Rasta tennis talk, man. And when Dustin Brown plays, we're going to do special episodes. We want to see him beat Nadal even more, right? So, yes, we have some events that are taking place out in the desert in California. First, a couple of post-mortems. Jack Sock versus Feliciano Lopez. The battle of the generations. Sock is a lost generation person versus Lopez, the 36-year-old Spaniard, who kind of brings sort of more of an all-court game to the table. But Lopez ultimately prevails at 36 years old. So again, the old guard prevailing against the younger crowd, the lost generation. Another partial example of that is this Cilic versus Kohlchreiber match, where Philippe Kohlchreiber at 34 years old prevails over the 29-year-old Cilic, who was looking a little overheated, so to speak, in the desert this week. I didn't have a lot of faith in Cilic, but Kohlchreiber, brings that single-handed backhand to the table and to the game, was able to prevail over Cilic, who was again looking sort of sluggish. One question that came up in the viewer comments a couple of posts ago was, who's more likely to win a Grand Slam in the near future? Would it be Cilic or Delpo? And, well, Delpo's looking pretty strong. That is Juan Martín del Potro, looking very strong, serving very well. As I've said before, I think I said in a tweet last night, he's going to need to do more than serve well. He's going to need more than big serves to get through the great Roger Federer if he can get to the final where he might be meeting Federer. But Delpo's looking good. Who's more likely? Well, I said, based on the last, say, 10 months, where Cilic has gotten to 2 Grand Slam finals, he's been stopped both times by one man, Roger Federer. If you compare that to Delpo, who's had not quite as impressive Grand Slam results. He did have the semifinal run at the U.S. Open, and he did, but before that, I think it was like 2013 when he had a run at Wimbledon. But Delpo struggles in the Grand Slam context in particular. So based on the immediate history of it, you'd think Cilic might be more likely to win a Grand Slam. Just based on his recent performance as well, kind of a lackluster performance in the desert by Marin Cilic, and Delpo's looking good in the desert. Can Delpo basically surpass Cilic. Can he do a kind of leapfrog over Cilic? Maybe Cilic is past his prime. Maybe that was the peak of Cilic. Those two finals. Well, he had that earlier peak, to be honest, but this is kind of his later peak, and possibly, it's going to plateau, and we won't see much from Cilic anymore. I'm not sure, but if I'm going to bet on it, I would say Cilic is a better bet to win a Grand Slam in the near future, because again, 2 final appearances for Cilic, whereas for Del Potro, you don't really have anything close to that. So the other piece of news, sort of an upsetting scenario, not really an upset, but Dominic Thiem was involved in an injury right there on the court against Cuevas. Thiem, sort of ironically, was approaching the net, and it looks like his ankle gave out on him. They did a replay of the point, and Thiem did look like he was in real pain when his sort of ankle, it kind of twisted up, and he went over on his ankle side, I think, and then he played out the rest of the set and played out for a few more, basically the next set, which Cuevas took, and then Dominic Thiem was just not looking good. I mean, he's able to walk, he's okay, but there you have it. There's a lost generation individual dealing with an injury that was, kind of his own fault, kind of a flat-footed injury that he, God bless him. I hope I wish him a speedy recovery. I hope it heals and everything is okay. Having some couple bizarre incidents with the Goffin, ball in the eye as well. This was a little bit bizarre from Dominic Thiem, but it did show that apparently he needs to work on his footwork. He needs to strengthen those ankles. I know I've had ankles give out on me while playing tennis, while doing athletics. It's not fun, but it's something that can be worked on. It's something that reflects something of a lack of preparation in terms of fitness and a fitness sort of preparation, I think. But I hope Thiem comes back, but it is a little bit telling, right as he comes up to the net. And Thiem does have, he works the court more so than a couple of his peers, but it is sort of ironic. As he comes up to the net and kind of starts to perform an all-court kind of thing, wow, his ankle gives out on him. So, gosh, another ominous sign for the emerging all-court players. Well, we'll have to see how that comes out. The matches coming up today are going to be interesting. We, of course, have Federer versus Jeremy Chardy, which talked a little bit about yesterday. Chardy has been able to squeeze sets out of Federer in 3 of their 4 previous meetings. But again, I don't see that there's going to be too many problems for Federer, particularly given the level of his game as demonstrated in his previous match with Raonic. The real question is going to be this quarterfinal coming up. I think it's possibly going to look like a Federer Chung, so a repeat fourth round. That'll be a 4th round match. No, quarterfinal, I'm sorry. Maybe the wig makes me think in strange ways. But yes, that's going to be the key match. Possibly Federer versus Chung, and it possibly will be a key match. Why? Because that's the ticket to the retention of Rogers #1. He's got to get to the semifinal to at least do that. And Chung is looking very, very strong, looked extremely strong, as noted by a commenter who seemed to really like Chung to begin with, but he did look strong in that match and put away Tomas Berdych in straight sets. So it looks like Chung will be in that quarterfinal. It looks like Federer will be in that quarterfinal, and that is going to be a match to watch. I cannot wait for that one. There's another there's the other 4th round that I'm looking at pretty closely is going to be the Fritz Coric match. That will possibly determine who gets into the semifinal to meet Federer. And I could be wrong about this, but I think it's becoming more and more likely. We'll just have to see how Kevin Anderson is playing, how Carreño Busta is playing, but it could be the case that Coric gets through and we see Roger Federer again, if he gets through Chung, again facing off against one of the next gen, the new generation players that seem to be finding form at Indian Wells. This is getting exciting, really exciting. Or that semifinal for Federer could be with Kevin Anderson, and Federer has a 4-0 head-to-head record against Anderson on all surfaces except grass, and in fact, Federer has never even dropped a set to to Anderson. So based on the history, Federer may have a better chance against Anderson than he has against Chardy, but that's complicated by a number of other factors. But Chardy has beaten Federer once in the past and has taken sets off of Federer in a couple of their matchups. So those will be the matches that we're looking at. The fourth round matches that are proceeding right now are also interesting. We've got Lopez versus Querrey. We've got Bagdatis versus Raonic. Of course, Delpo versus Mayer. Herbert versus Kohlchreiber. Kohlchreiber is another older guard player who was able to get through Cilic. And so that end of the draw could end up with something like a Querrey versus Raonic quarterfinal, as well as a Delpo versus Kohlchreiber quarterfinal. And in the semifinal, in that half of the draw, we could see quite possibly a Querrey Delpo semifinal, and Querrey is actually playing quite well. So the final thing that I will note is just an issue or a couple of the comments that we had with respect to the competing legacies of the game. And, the relative influences of Federer versus Djokovic versus Nadal. A couple people said that the Djokovic influence is kind of bound up with the Nadal influence, which is it's a correct idea. Roger kind of stands apart. But a lot of the comments stated, and I think that this is a fair and good point, which is that Roger is sort of inimitable, and that you can't teach that kind of genius. It takes a long time to learn. Of course, for Roger, it's taken, upwards of 20 years, really his whole life, to perfect the style that he has now, and the all-court game that he has now, the instinctual capabilities that he has, this stone-cold seriousness, this massive degree of emotional control, R-rated to be sure. So that takes a whole career, a whole lifetime, essentially, to develop. And so one of the ideas is that you can't imitate that at all. But one response is that they could develop it over time. If it just takes time, if it's a time thing, it could develop. And a couple of people have noted that there are hints of some influences in Chapo, in Tiafoe, possibly. There are some pieces of evidence that suggest we may be looking at a transitional period right now. In fact, right before our very eyes, things could be changing. I posed the question the other day, which is kind of a thought experiment, or in one of the comments, which is basically, what if Djokovic is not only changing, but also the courts? And the game, what about if the game is changing around Djokovic? What if part of Djokovic's problem is that he's seeing a different game? He's having to play a different sort of game. Maybe Roger's influence is already starting, and as spectators, we can't even see it conspicuously, but it's there, it's happening, and it's possible that it is playing. You do have these hints in Chapo. I mean, they really need to develop this more of an all-court play. But the other response is that Roger's influence might not be sort of monolithic. He might not be the kind of producing Federer clones. It might be just an increasing heterogeneity in the style of play, and that's what I was suggesting last time. Maybe that will be one of his key legacies. Maybe, help some budding serve and volleyers come out and start taking some risks. And then, of course, also more just all-court play. But you have a few in the older generation who are doing this, right? With Lopez, maybe even to some extent Kohlchreiber, but certainly with Feliciano Lopez, and who has kind of defied the sort of Nadal-based norm for the Spaniards. But you do have the older players developing that, so maybe it's a matter of time. We'll just have to see, but it's a really interesting question. I got some great comments. Give more comments. What do you think? So you upset with the hair? But listen, we've got a Rasta. We've got a Rastafarian. We've got a Rastafarian. Let's get the reggae going again. Go, Bob. It really does. I mean, Dustin Brown, your host. We want to do tennis talk, man. So subscribe to the channel, man. Subscribe to the channel. Come back here. We listen to reggae music and we do tennis talk, man. We talk about the great Roger Federer. Come to my channel. Subscribe to my channel. Jah love. Worship our Jah love, man. Talk to you later. Bye.